Hear ye, gather round. It is the Sixers Talk Podcast, a trade deadline special brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU Works, Danny Pommells, our producer, Ben Berry, in the cut, making things happen. The Queen, Amy Fadool, and friend of the podcast, special invited guest, Sixers analyst, Sixers player, Temple legend, Mr. Marc Jackson in the flesh. And it's Mark with a C. Don't get it messed up.
That's right. That's how you're supposed to
But here we are, folks. The Sixers have made some moves, 3 to be exact. We are here to break it down. Joel Embiid made a return to the lineup.
You gotta get that out quickly. He was not traded.
He's not eligible to be traded, as Amy made sure that we knew in the group. Ben Berry said I pointed the wrong way for Mark. So is this the right way? Okay.
No.
There we go. Marc Jackson.
That's the wrong way.
Oh, is it? No, based on so look, in my screen I am pointing at Amy.
You would be terrible at meteorology.
This is Mark. Oh no. I had one audition.
Cold front is coming over here.
I'm gonna tell a quick story.
It's coming from here.
I came back to Philly. And Amy, you know this ridiculous story. I put my demo reel on a big bag of popcorn and took it around to all the stations. And
Mark, do you know this part?
No.
Oh, so good.
We're going to skip over that part. I'm just going to get to the embarrassing part.
That's the best part. Sidebar. He put his resume on a bag of popcorn and dropped it off to all the television stations, including Comcast Sports Center at the time, NBC Sports Philadelphia. And what did it say, Daniel? What did it say?
Let me help your ratings pop. And it had my demo reel and the big bag of popcorn, like one of those nuts to you big bag ones. Yeah. So crickets didn't hear a thing. I did manage to get an audition at Channel 6 PBI, and they actually had me go in front of a green screen. Never did the green screen, and it was bad, man. It was bad. That was like the tail end of the audition. I did the set. Then they added me onto the green screen thing.
Shockingly, you don't work at Channel 6.
I don't work there.
We're so grateful. You've been here though for a long time.
Forever. Yeah, almost 15 years. Wow.
I know.
Not quite. I'm like 13. I know
under.
you're like 16, so you're definitely
yeah.
longer in the tooth than me. But still, we are here to talk basketball, and popcorn. The Sixers made some moves. Joel Embiid is back, and popcorn if you want to get into that. But listen, the Sixers have gotten younger. They've gotten younger. Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin, essentially. And then KJ Martin for just basically cap flexibility. And then they end up getting Jared Butler for Reggie Jackson from the Washington Wizards. And
a pick.
And a pick. They sent the pick.
Yeah. The Wizards are going to release Reggie Jackson. They've already put him on waivers. So
and Caleb and Cody Martin both got traded. You and your brother both getting traded.
That's tough, man.
How was that?
That's tough.
Exactly.
He's in the same in the West. Both of them in the West. So they good now.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But what are we thinking of this influx of 24-year-olds? Quentin Grimes can play the 2, 6'4". Jared Butler, more of a point guard, shifty. We just saw him give the Sixers a bit of the business a couple of nights ago when the Washington Wizards were here. But what are you guys thinking of this influx of talent before we get to Joel Embiid's return, Paul George's night last night, and this back-to-back?
Well, when I sat back and looked at everything, I was like, are they going to try to move Paul or what's going on? But they moved 2 wings. They moved KJ and they moved Caleb. I was like, okay, that takes our length down a little bit. But I believe they did that because I think Justin Edwards, the Philly product, he kind of gave them hope.
Drove him out of town, huh?
I'm cheaper, man. I'm cheaper, and I'm younger, and I'm ready to do something. So I think that, and I think, Ricky Council also has had some fluctuations in his gameplay, but he has a bright side. And I really believe the Sixers for today, we could save some money. These guys give us similar productivity, and they're like, let's move these older guys who's costing us more. So I think that's why that happened.
Yeah, I think Mark makes a really good point because they're trying to free up not only some room, and as you mentioned, with some of these salary type dumps or whatever, so they can make a run at somebody that's probably currently on the roster and maybe somebody else. But really, it's about getting a little bit more youth in there and guys that are more flexible when they do want to re-sign them, right? So there's certain prices that some of these guys are going to demand. To me, Caleb Martin was probably the bigger surprise than anything else. I think they really did like KJ Martin, but I think unfortunately, even though his 2-year contract, only the The first year was guaranteed. The second one was not. I think it was just, it wasn't cost effective. He hadn't played in obviously well over a month at this point. But Caleb Martin, to me, he was a guy that was brought in. Nick Nurse talked about it last night after that game and said, he was brought in here and he could help playoff teams. And that's what we were hoping. And obviously, he could help another playoff team. I mean, that's kind of the vibe with him. He had been that player. And you saw him really shine in that Celtics game on Christmas Day. That was like, you thought, wow, this is exactly what he's here for. And he had found his shot the last probably couple of months. Obviously, he had been injured a little too much, I think, for us to see any kind of real return on that 4-year contract. But it was a 4-year contract that he signed. And, getting traded before the trade deadline of the first year, not even making it 6 months in, I thought was a real surprise to me. But when Daryl Morey speaks, I'm sure he'll say exactly why that is, to the point where he can, because obviously you don't want to tamper and say something that you can't. We're trying to make a run at whomever, because I do think that Mark and I've talked about that they are going to try to make a run, and Coach said it too, at Guerschon Yabusele, who's a guy that is here on a league minimum, and he was not eligible to be extended just because of the way that the CBA works on those. So they needed to free up some room on that front and get a little younger. There was a lineup we saw last time. It was Reggie Jackson and Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry and Kelly Oubre. And you thought, this is a little older. Of course, that lineup did hold the lead. And unfortunately, the other lineup did not. But I think they want to inject a little bit of youth. And I think Mark makes a really good point about Justin Edwards. Here's a guy that, was projected really highly coming out of high school and all the way up through the first couple of months of his college career. And unfortunately, it just didn't go his way. He didn't play particularly well in college. And so his stock really dropped. And I think the Sixers got a gift right there. 6'7". We saw a great defensive play against the Mavericks earlier this week. I think he has shown that he can be a reliable 3-and-D guy. And that's something that can really fit in this lineup.
Yeah, the confidence for sure from this kid, particularly as a rookie coming in and guarding multiple positions, like you said, Amy, the 3-point shot. And on top of all that, with the Caleb Martin thing, he was on such a below market deal considering what you thought he might have gotten free agency. I think it was 4 for $28, I think was his contract. But as a contender, though, if you're the Mavs, you look at that and you're kind of like, oh, yeah, like we can get a guy who has experience, who has experience, who can play in crunch time and is kind of developed the skill set that can be really beneficial to our squad. So
it was
that's like
4 for 35.
4 for 35. Okay. So
no, it's still
below market. Below market
absolutely.
Deal, and you're under team control. So it just really, quid pro quo, something for something type of thing kind of comes to mind. But at the same time, though, you guys make excellent points on the Justin Edwards, Ricky Council IV, who I always thought, I didn't understand why he didn't get more playing time, considering how they were scratching and clawing to find, a shot in the arm or players who could give them a little jolt. And the Guerschon Yabusele thing, Coach outlined it really well. And, we don't see as much of Coach as we used to. So I'm definitely always listening when he has something to say.
Coach,
so
listen, it's cold out. So Coach goes down to Florida for a bit.
I ain't mad one bit.
He flies back up for like 2 games here and there. Mark and I are like, I wouldn't be flying back up. I would stay in Florida. He flew back up after it was like 20 degrees. I'm like, no, man. Where I would be Florida. So yeah, Coach, he's back full time, I think, the week after next. So he was here for 2 games and gone for 2 games, and then he's coming back. But yeah.
Point being, he was saying the production Yabusele is given is for someone who's making between $15 and $20 million a year. Yeah. And the Sixers seem to be moving the pieces around in order to be able to pay him, get a reliable 4 next to Joel Embiid, somebody who can also play the small ball 5 and has a varied skill set. So listen, if anything, so many people want to call for Daryl Morey's head and what's the front office doing and stuff like that. A move like Guerschon Yabusele gives him some goodwill that he can like bringing that guy in has been an awesome signing and just a heck of a heads up move by this front office. But with all that said, do you feel like these are guys? Jared Butler is on a 2-way contract and both will be restricted free agents next season. The Mavericks couldn't come to terms with the extension for Quentin Grimes. So there is some housekeeping that the Sixers need to do. But conceivably, though, these are guys who can fit right in and play right away, right?
I believe so. I know Quentin Grimes right now for sure. I think he's giving me a DeAnthony Melton feel and vibe. I maybe a little bit better offensively, if I can say that, whatever disrespectful to Anthony. But I think he can give us that. I think that's the one piece. I'm like, okay, interesting. Now we bring in another guard that's like, we shipped out Reggie Jackson. We got a younger guy in who's more of a point guard. But he's also a scoring guard. So he's a combo. I think Grimes is really off the ball. I think that's going to be curious to know how they figure those minutes out along with Kyle Lowry and Gordon.
Yeah, Mark and I talked about it leading up to the trade deadline. What would you want? And, it was another ball handler because Tyrese Maxey plays so much better when he's off the ball as far as the catch and shoot three. And we had a great graphic. I can't remember the exact numbers, but Tyrese Maxey's threes when he has to bring the ball up himself, obviously, and take the three versus a catch and shoot, meaning that someone's passing him the three and he's popping and hitting it. His numbers were almost double. It was astounding.
Drastic.
It was like 20 points higher on the percentages of making a three when he was on the receiving end of a catch and shoot as opposed to bringing the ball up. And that's natural. And Mark, has talked about it as a player. Like, it's obviously a lot more easy when you're sitting over on the side and you find your spot and then they find you. That's a natural position, I think. So for Tyrese Maxey, obviously we'd love for him to drive to the basket. And when he's got the ball in his hands, he can do that. But I think him having another ball handler back there is really helpful. And though we do like Paul George handling the ball at times, he just hasn't been healthy. Kelly Oubre, not a natural ball handler. Can he do it? Sure. They all can do it. But do you want him back there? And Kyle Lowry obviously has been injured as well. So he hasn't had a traditional guard with him since Jerry McCain went down. So it'd be nice to have a more traditional and a younger guard who can, one, keep up with him when he is running up and down the court, and two, obviously be able to take the ball out of his hands and help him create for others as well. So I think Jared Butler, who will see time coming off the bench and could see more than that, it's certainly than he was getting with the Wizards, but also in Quentin Grimes, who had a nice couple of years when he was with the Knicks. We hadn't seen as much with the Mavs, but that's the style of play. And obviously they've got Kyrie and Luka there. And what was he doing? There's only one basketball. So even when Quentin Grimes was in, if he was in with Luka and with Kyrie, he wasn't going to get the ball as much. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with both of those guys. I would think, creating him and Maxey in a backcourt would be something you'll probably see in the beginning stages to see how that works.
And look at this little young rotation. If they keep Butler and Grimes around, McCain, Maxey, Butler, Grimes, Edwards, like suddenly there's this little influx of youth here in the backcourt where among all that, somehow Eric Gordon has carved out a role for himself.
He's had a nice 3-point shot.
Lose the wisdom teeth, you shoot better basketball.
Who knew?
Write that down. Who knew? But speaking of Maxey, man, just continues to be on a tear, and tough loss last night because there was a de facto, I made the all-star team, you didn't, back and forth between him and Tyler Hero. That maybe, not necessarily a war between them, but as a fan, you're watching, you're hoping the Sixers can get the best of the Heat in that regard. They've taken on the chin in a game that they were close to. I remember post-game came on, you guys were talking about it, and Amy's like, they are 20 and 30, 50 games in, and they are 20 and 30. So I'm saying all this to say we haven't gotten to any of the moves that have been made outside of the NBA, but the Sixers currently at 20 and 30, sitting in 11th place. The Bulls, who did pick up Brandon Ingram right there, at 10. The Hawks with the upset and disgruntled Trae Young at 9. The Raptors make some moves as well. Like, do you think the Sixers have positioned themselves to outrace those other teams? Do you feel like here with 32 games to go that they will still get into that play-in? Did they take a step back? Like, what are you thinking about the positioning and the jockeying as this race comes to a close here with 32 games left?
For me, I think we're in a better position to compete because we got guys that can play. I think, respectfully, Caleb Martin, KJ Martin, we don't know when they was going to be healthy enough to contribute. But we got Grimes, we got Butler, I don't know who's going to play, how many, but they got minutes to play. And Edwards and Ricky Council can play. They're healthy. The best ability is availability. I don't care what you bring to the table on paper, but what you bring to the table on the actual table. So I think that's more important. I think we position ourselves now with Joel Embiid back in the lineup, Paul George seemingly back. Now this team could build some camaraderie, some chemistry. And I don't believe I'm saying this 50 games into the season, y'all. But they building camaraderie to be able to really get it going and make a run. I think now with Atlanta making these trades, Atlanta pretty much sold off. Sold their teams. I think they're looking to tank. So, when you look at us catching Chicago with them losing their best player, and now Atlanta's pretty much trading everybody but Trey, I think we'll be able to catch them. We'll be in that 10th or 9th spot. I don't know if we can catch 8th, but I think we get up to that 8th, 10th or 9th.
Yeah, initially when the Bulls traded Zach LaVine, I thought, well, that they're going to absolutely just the bottom will fall out. But then, obviously they picked up Brandon Ingram, and you thought, oh, well, maybe not. But Brandon Ingram is an expiring contract, I think. So I think that is probably one of those moves that was just going to, or we need somebody to score points, and you're losing a guy. Zach LaVine, talking about like an all-star snub. You should see his resume. I know he played for the Bulls, but holy smokes, like he's shooting like well over 40% from three, well over 50% from the field, averaging over 25 points. It's just he and Tyrese Maxey certainly had cases. Tyler Hero showed us last night why he is an all-star. He was phenomenal. But I just thought that, all right, maybe the Bulls are going to come back down to earth. I still think the Pistons can come back down to earth a bit. And then obviously the Hawks, I think, are in a free fall as well. But to Mark's, I agree with Mark wholeheartedly. I don't think that they're going to get to 7 or 8. The best they can hope for, just because with 32 games left, you really have to look at it and say, how many games is Joel Embiid going to play? How many games is Paul George going to play? Those guys together, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid have played 10 games together. 10. They're 7-3. That's it. Like, that's the bottom line. They're 50 games in, and those guys have played 10 games together. Sixers have a winning record with Joel Embiid. When he plays, I think it's 8-6 now. And when he and Maxey play together, they're 8-2, 8-3. So there you go. I mean, there's some positives when you look at it, but there are, I think, 14 games under 500 when Joel Embiid doesn't play. So that's why you're sitting at 10 games under 500 for this one. It's a tough sled uphill when you're really hampered by injuries and the unknown factor. And I know, we're going to talk about Joel Embiid's return. The thing that I loved about Joel Embiid's return is the most casual triple-double I think he's ever had in his career. He's had 8 of them. And it was just like you're watching the game and we're watching down there like, look at that. He's got a triple-double. And he for a guy that changes the way that the offense is run drastically when he comes back in, I thought he actually, kind of fit in much better than I expected. When he played. Paul George, I could not say the same. That was a tough watch last night.
That was doo-doo is what that was.
He looked bad. He looked bad. I mean, he didn't look good. Yeah. And I thought that I don't know what that is. I guess he's working his way back. And Joel Embiid talked about it after the win. He was just like, yeah, you're still trying to get your game feet under you. But Paul George, like, I don't know. He just didn't look like he was fitting in the offense at all. And here's a guy that should be able to fit into whatever they're running. I mean, that's his bill of goods, and I don't know. Yeah. It was not good. It was actually kind of boring to watch him play. That's I came away with was like, meh. That was a meh game.
Like me.
Hey, 3 for 11, man. 3 for 11.
3 for 11. There were only threes. He was 3 for 6 from 3. I mean, he was 0 for 5 from 2-point.
And you know what didn't help?
No free throws either. Sorry, Mark.
That's going to be fine.
I'm very fired up.
You know what didn't help that whole thing either, Amy? Is watching Joel Embiid, who set up more games, come back and pretty much like he never left.
Yeah, get right in there.
So then when you expect Paul George, it's like the bar is set. And then when you don't come through, it's like,
what happened?
Are you Paul George?
Yeah.
Like at one point, with all due respect, I asked Coach Lionel, I said, Coach, when you see these guys on this floor, what separates Paul George and Justin Edwards? He said 50-something million. That's what.
Yep.
As far as performance-wise, I don't see the difference.
Nope.
At that present time, I was like, yeah, that's a problem.
That's a big problem.
Adem Bona had 11 points. Adem Bona had 11 points last night.
The best ability is availability, like Mark said. In the Caleb Martin trade to Dallas, they evaluated him in the physical and determined that he was so far away from helping them out right now that they should send another pick to the Dallas Mavericks. So the Sixers had to send another second-round pick to Dallas because after Caleb Martin's physical, they're like, wait, he's not going to be healthy anytime soon to be on the floor. This isn't fair unless you add a little more incentive to the trade. So just gives you an idea of where things were with
Wait. I'm sorry. Yep. I didn't get – are you serious?
Yeah, I'm dead serious. Yep. The Sixers had to add another second-round pick
because of his
deal. Because they evaluated him in the physical and they figured that he wouldn't be on the court. Better.
Well, I think that was why the Wizards trade was so important because they had to get picks back. They gave away a lot of picks in order to move some of these contracts. Like the KJ Martin. It was KJ Martin.
Oh, so you're saying the 4 second-round picks they got back from the Wizards, they needed those to facilitate some of what happened.
Because they had to give away picks. They had to give away a pick with KJ Martin to get rid of that contract. They had to give away a pick with Caleb Martin to get rid of that contract. So they had to get something back. So they took Jared Butler and 3 and 4 picks, second rounders, obviously going forward, not all next year. And they gave away like the worst of a 2026 first round pick. They've got like 3 that they can choose from, whatever the worst one is that conveys.
Wow. 20 minutes on the trade deadline stuff. Wasn't a very phenomenal deadline for the 76ers. Before we move on to current Sixers stuff and some other discussion, what grade do you give the Sixers here with what they did at the deadline as far as salary, players they acquired, players they let go? What do you think?
Me personally, I give him a C+.
Okay, I was thinking B-.
Yeah, I give him a C+ because yes, we traded away 2 players that was unable to play for players that could play. But I also think they are younger. So that's a good plus. But did we get superstar players, necessarily franchise changes? No. But we got players that can contribute. So that's why I give them a C+.
I'm a tough grader. Shawnee knows this. Daniel knows when I talk about how I see
no curves at Amy.
No. I use a very. I'll give a C-, just because I think it was average. The downside for me is something Marc just mentioned. These are not guys that are going to contribute in giant, meaningful ways. It doesn't mean they're not going to contribute, and the Sixers do need guys to play roles, and that's important for any team. But they're healthy. That's a plus. They're young. That's a plus. And they don't have very expensive contracts. So those are pluses as far as what they can contribute. I think that's a real average kind of thing. So I'll give them a C. Maybe a mine. We'll just keep it a C, a regular old.
What's your Danny?
Which is a 78, I think.
I lied. The one more thing on the deadline. A lot went on. Jimmy Butler got traded to Golden State. There was speculation that Kevin Durant was going to Golden State, but apparently he put the kibosh on that deal.
I think he hates Draymond.
And he didn't want to go back to Golden State. There was speculation that the Warriors have reached out to the Sixers about Paul George and what his availability was. Are you surprised?
Come on through.
Yes.
Are you surprised? Yes. Did you want that to happen? Are you surprised it didn't happen?
That would have had to have been I love, and talking to like Coach, he's really good about it because obviously he's a forward GM. He can really shed a different kind of, light on some of these things. The maneuvering that you have to do with the way the NBA works is the Jimmy Butler trade is a prime example. Like, they're telling the guys on the Heat bench, like it's for this, this, and this. No. Like the Warriors got one player. They got Jimmy Butler. There's guys that didn't even know where they were going, but they had to include them to make the money work across the board. It's the craziest trades that happen because you have 5 teams involved. Players don't know what's happening until probably sometimes hours where they're going afterwards. So the Paul George thing.
We will touch on that later in the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I don't know how the Paul George
telltale sign. The Warriors closed the doors during the media availability.
They didn't have guys on the plane. They closed the doors to talk to everybody. I mean, it's just the trade deadline, and Marc can talk about it. I know we're going to get into it later, but to me, like the Paul George thing, how it would have worked. I saw some. It would have been like a Bradley Beal, and you would have had so many other max players try to get involved, or so many other picks just
to make the numbers work.
It wouldn't have mattered. Like there's a bunch of $50 million players. Jimmy Butler's one. Bradley Beal's another. Obviously, Paul George is up there, but it's just Durant. I don't know. I mean, sure, if it would have returned the Sixers a player that plays basketball and puts on a uniform and bounces it, then I would have been all about it. I have a very low bar, though.
Let's take a quick time out. I didn't know if you had anything to add on that, Marc, but let's just take a quick time out unless you have something to add.
This real quick. When it comes to the trade deadline and the Paul George effect, Paul George is a career 20-something point scorer. Last year, he played more games than Jimmy Butler, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Brandon Ingram. What I'm seeing now is a player who's just fine being in a space. I expected when Joel Embiid to be down and when somebody else him to step up, be more aggressive. Watching him kind of cruise along and not really do much more, try to empty the can into the cannon. Like to me, it bothers me, and I think it's bothering Sixers fans to the point, like, I think they saying we might as well have kept Tobias for half the price.
Ooh.
And that's respectfully, when you kick the pulse around town, people said we had a choice. We would rather just have Tobias, like, because we'd have saved money. Respectfully,
and you knew what you were getting.
Yeah, you knew, like,
the expectation wasn't, 25 points game.
Now, I'm not saying they're the same player because Paul George is shown to be an elite player, but it seems like he's trying to find his way. That's all I got on that.
Yeah, and you pile that on top of all the podcasting and stuff like that. It's like you read the room a little bit.
He's injured and he's talking about his teammates. If I'm them, I'm like, keep your stop it.
Like, it's this one guy I follow, man. He actually counts the number of episodes and how many games Paul has played.
That's
and
so
his
wrong.
episodes are winning. I was like, oh,
that's so wrong.
I mean, Paul, you are killing it. Not in a good way.
Let's take a time out here. We will talk more Sixers and more about this NBA trade deadline and what is going on around the league. But we want to show some love to our title sponsor, Wilmington University. We would not be where we are without them. Advance your career with a graduate degree from Wilmington University at WilMU. Your dream is our mission. Get to know us at wilmu.edu. Back here on the Sixers Talk podcast, and it was the triumphant return of one Joel Embiid, Joel Hans Embiid. We have Marc Jackson here, so make sure we get the Hans in there. And it was a win against the Dallas Mavericks in a good game. Of course, the NBA has this weird way of you're playing a team that you just traded with, and Caleb Martin could have just switched sides and
that was weird.
Home with them.
You see that in baseball.
Very weird.
Right. It is super weird. Like you do a deal with the Dallas Mavericks, and that's the team you're playing. Anthony Davis had just got shipped there. He was not available, but who was available? Paul George wasn't available, but who was is Joel Hans Embiid. We saw him hanging out with his son before the game.
That's the most adorable video of all time.
Yeah, if there was a way for him to soften us up, that was the
bring
way
Arthur out every game then. Okay.
Bring Arthur out. He's fooling around with his son. He was very introspective, as he can be after the game as well, but he lit it up on the floor. The first player ever to miss 15 or more games and have a triple-double in his first game back in NBA history. Listen, he's a special player. You say whatever the hell you want about him. You criticize him, but when he's on the floor, there's a certain degree of basketball that maybe only him and a few other players can reach. And we saw that with the win that he helped propel them to. And he wasn't even at his best. He wasn't even at his sharpest, but he brings a unicorn nature to the game that you cannot deny. And I guess you agree, Mark.
I agree with you 100%, man. I mean, it seems like he's been doing this more and more. I don't believe I'm saying this. He's been doing it more and more lately. He's been missing games and coming back and act like, oh, nothing happened. I'm back where I was. Like, how do you do that? Mm-hmm. It's like he did it last year. He did it this year. Like, but it's just showing how good he really is and how, I hate to use this word, how easy the game is for him. Mm-hmm. And the best part about yesterday, that game where he played, is the team did not defer to him. This team has been running. They've been passing the ball. The assist's been up. The facilitating's been up. And they've been playing a lot fast paced. And I was like, Joel said, I was hoping and praying that they did not go back to, let's just give it to Joel and stay around. Like, no, Joel, that's how we play now. You better get in when you fit in. And he just got into the flow. He even said it was a lot faster than when I left. And I'm glad it got to that point.
Yeah, he had some really high praise for obviously Tyrese Maxey, but Justin Edwards, I thought he had really good praise on, and just trying to help those guys along. Listen, it is the most frustrating part about Joel Embiid is that he can roll out of bed and drop 30 points without doing anything else seemingly. Obviously, he's working out behind the scenes. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he literally just did that. But that's what it appears like. You don't see him for a month, and all of a sudden he gets a triple-double. Like, what's happening? Who does that? He does. The games that he was playing before he went out with injury, he was averaging over 30, like almost 35 points in 36 minutes. It is just confounding. And that is what makes him such a great player. And that's what makes him such a lightning rod for why people are so either like in love with the way he plays or frustrated by the way he plays, or both, because he can do that. He has that ability. Yeah. He is a tremendous player, one of the best players in the NBA when he's on the court. There is no doubt about it. The problem is that he's just not available on the court. And then it was disappointing. Like, we're watching the post game.
That's the problem, Amy.
Yeah, just a small one. Off camera, Nick Nurse is like, he's not available tomorrow, right? I'm like, no, we all knew he wasn't available for the back-to-back. And he says after the game, Joel Embiid is like, yeah, I wish I could help more. I wish you could too. Like, just come on, let's do it then.
And then you see how dry Paul George is in a game where he could help pick up the slack. No Joel, plenty of shots to go around, and you lose such a tight game. If he shoots, 7 for 11, you're in a much better position.
How about more than 11 shots?
Yeah.
And another one. Excellent
Come on,
point.
you're Paul George. Like
you did have I don't know if excuse is the word, but you did give him a little leeway, Mark, when you said that he's a rhythm guy last night on the post-game show. You said he's a guy who kind of has to find his rhythm when he comes back. Well, the Sixers ain't got time for that though right now.
Hey, we said how was their record, how many games into the season. They don't have that. And that's the problem that's kind of poking everybody. Like, we don't have time for you. Just go out, man. Just go out and just leave it all out there. And listen, I take this back to Andre Iguodala. Sixers fans ran Andre Iguodala away because his numbers were good. He was like 17, 7, and 7. But it's like, yeah, we need more. But like, it's similar to like Paul George. Like, if you're not going to give us more, you look too chill for us to be Philadelphia. And I think that's the biggest problem with the Sixers fans. They just don't like, they think he looks too chill and not seeing him playing with hunger. And I'm not saying he's not, but that's the image he's portraying to the fans. Yeah,
it's a little too nonchalant, like a little too, casual of like, all right, I'm going to be out here. I'm going to run up and down. And if I get the ball, shoot it. No, I'm going to need you to be a little bit more aggressive than that. We haven't seen you in 5 games because you hurt the pinky finger on your non-shooting hand.
And a guy like Allen Iverson who
buddy, tape it up and let's go.
Bro, you remember that giant number 3 that he used to wear right here on his finger.
Right next, and it was buddy taped, constantly buddy taped.
And you bring up a great point because you see Paul George at the podium and he's so like
that's just how he is. I get it.
But it is, but on top of that, it's also one of those read the room type of things. Like you gotta empty the tank, like Mark said, in a way that on the floor that won't matter as much as how you talk or act off of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's definitely a gap there, and frustrating one right now for the 76ers, particularly because listen, they need to win as many games as possible. They're playing teams that are in front of them. They are playing teams that they hope to stay in front of. Detroit, Milwaukee, Toronto, Brooklyn before another Boston game the day after my birthday, February 20th. So Detroit, Milwaukee.
Drop. Cool.
Very subtle.
Was that a little too much?
Work, we know why.
Very subtle.
But let's just pick those 4 games. Detroit,
let's
Milwaukee,
just pick this
Toronto,
4 games
Brooklyn.
right around your birthday.
So Milwaukee seems like the one game they should lose in that stretch. Can they go 3-1 in that stretch?
That's a national television game.
So you feel like Joel's going to empty the tank and they'll be.
I mean, if I was going to play,
3 will be out there. And
Marc Jackson, which game would I play in? Would I play in the Pistons game or would I play in the Milwaukee Bucks game on national television?
Milwaukee Bucks.
Okay.
And the league appreciates that very much.
Like those Sunday matinees.
Listen, it's a little precursor to the Super Bowl.
I'm about to say bumping right up against the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's good though. You get ready.
That's a great. I'm just saying it's perfect. That's just like the perfect scenario to get all your eyeballs there and then shift them to the big game and all the prop bets that go with it. But 3-1. You think they can go 3-1 in that stretch? What do you think?
I do. I think this team is running. I think this team is really running on all cylinders on go. I truly believe that they have found the key. And I think other guys stepping up and filling a void that they had at other positions. And I'm not talking about Maxey. I'm talking about people might look at Justin Edwards' numbers. Oh, he's only averaging 9 since he's been in lineup or whatever. But he's doing things. He's getting another long defender wing. He's getting a consistent guy that can play minutes. And then you look at with Ricky Council. Now, I'm the first to say Ricky, sometimes he get the ball and he goes to full speed ahead. I'm like, put my head to, what's going to happen? But
not going to work out.
Half the time it works out half the time.
Yeah.
So, with that energy, I think they're doing. I think Max has found his flow and guys have found the flow. Gordon is shooting lights out. I think guys have found a way. These include Joel Embiid, some games, Paul George, some games. I think the momentum continues.
All right, so we got the Pistons, the Bucks, the Raptors, and the Nets. The Nets are going to sell off everybody. I think I read that they're going to waive pretty much anybody that has a pulse. Ben Simmons is going to be waived or bought out. Pistons, I think they go 2-2. I think one of those teams sneaks up and gets them. Unfortunately, I don't know which one. I don't know if it's the Raptors or the Pistons.
Mark's boy, Jalen Duren.
Yeah, but Joel plays well as a short something.
Yeah, Joel owns that guy.
But you just said he wouldn't play that game, so there'll be no Joel against.
That's true.
That's right.
But Yaba spaced him out.
I think one of those teams get him, whether it's the Raptors or the Pistons. I think some gets surprises them. But the thing is, they're due to win one of those close games. They lost the Nuggets game that was close, which was an exceptionally high scoring affair. Obviously, the Heat game, they could have won that one. Those are tough. So they're due for a one like that. So it wouldn't surprise me if they go 3-1, but I'm going to hedge my bets because I've watched 50 games and I'm going to say 2-2. 50.
All right.
50 games in.
Season-long 6-game homestand is done. The Sixers on the road for the next 2 and then home against Toronto February 11th. And let's tie the podcast in a bow, guys. We're going to use a thought Amy brought up earlier in the podcast because we talked about the Golden State Warriors, the issues they had with who was leaving when and the timing of the trades and breaking it to the players and whatnot. So much so, Steve Kerr voices frustration and saying that the NBA's got to do something. They got to change the trade deadline. I would think, this was Steve Kerr's words, he said it will make more sense for them to have it during the All-Star break so players aren't finding out during shoot-around or warm-ups or in ways that compromise when they can play, who's on the bench or whatever, so that if you move players over the trade deadline, theoretically everybody's home or in more of a position to get up and go and not be in these, I kind of got caught with my pants down, so to speak. Weird analogy, but it kind of fits the situation. But point being is that Mark, as a player who's been traded and had to deal with these type of situations
multiple times. You're going to say multiple times.
Yeah. Okay. So
you were in demand, my friend.
Steve Kerr seems to have a pretty good point, considering we've seen these situations develop many times before. Anthony Davis talked about it a little bit at shoot around the other night. We've seen all this stuff happen with the Warriors and who's leaving, who's going, where they're going, when they have to go, and things like that. So can you shed some light on that? What you think?
Yeah. Where people might not remember that the trade deadline used to be back a couple of days after All-Star break. But remember when Anthony Dikembe Mutombo got traded for Theo Ratliff, like the day after the All-Star game, and then DeMarcus Cousins got traded during the All-Star game. Yeah, I think that was such a bad look for the league. That's why they moved it up to before the All-Star break. So that they know majority of the time most teams wait towards almost to the last day to make significant trades. And if you do it that way, then it gives guys a chance to do something for the next couple of days. Then they have All-Star break, that gap to kind of adjust their family and their schedules like that. But if you look at it like that, those two trades, I think made the NBA's
change the landscape.
Yes, the Dikembe Mutombo for Theo Ratliff back in, I think it was 2001. That was a horrible look. That was the day after, because Dikembe had that amazing All-Star when he was defending the paint, and when the East came back. And then you look at the DeMarcus Cousins thing. That NBA got a lot of negative publicity when they traded DeMarcus Cousins during the All-Star game, which he was in.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He was in it, so he's like doing press conferences, and they're like whispering in his ear, like, "Hey, just so you know."
He was on a press. Yep.
He was just like,
"So, Mark, leave it the same then."
I would leave it the same. I don't want them to do it over All-Star break. Maybe you can put it up to it's the day before the All-Star break, so guys get that gap to kind of get situated and stuff like that. But I wouldn't put it after the All-Star break. I think that's too late in the season. Plus, I think teams make significant changes. Like I know everybody's talking about Luka and going to Lakers, but I think the winner of this All-Star trade deadline was the Cleveland Cavaliers. So now they get all this time to get their chemistry going. And to me, now I think they're above Boston the way they've been playing the game. So I think I like it better now.
Yeah. The thing is, there's no good time to do it because, as Mark mentioned, you're uprooting your family a lot of time for these guys. The business side of it doesn't really, take into account the personal side. But to have it on All-Star weekend when these guys, if you're not in the All-Star game, it's your one chance to kind of reset and get away, whether it's just being at home with your family or going on vacation. And then it's like, just kidding, you're not coming back to where you thought you were. The answer is there's no good answer, but I think on the All-Star weekend, because it's their break in the midst of a slog of an 82 game season, you're 50 plus games in, you're just looking for a little time away. And I think that would be a pretty tough pill to swallow. But also, Mark said, I mean, we all saw it. DeMarcus Cousins literally, you're not working here anymore.
Yeah.
You don't work here anymore.
Yeah.
You got fired on your day off.
Yeah. It was bad.
It was bad. It was bad look.
It was a horrible
And the thing
look.
is, the All-Star, they wanted to make
Horrible.
the All-Star game, I don't know. They
Yeah.
make the All-Star game this feature thing, and then all of a sudden they want to muck it up with making people have, trades and stuff.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if they were at the All-Star game and the Doncic trade went down?
Oh my God.
No one would talk about the All-Star
I
game.
know.
We barely talk about it anyway,
Right.
but they definitely wouldn't be talking about it then.
You listen, my son tried to tell me he couldn't sleep because of the Luka trade yet. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're not even a Lakers fan, but it was so interesting and all this.
Jarring.
But the Sixers back at it Friday against the Pistons. Pregame is 7.
Yes, pregame's at 7:00 on Friday.
All right, pregame is 7. Join Mark, join Amy, and do we have
We'll
coach for
all
that?
see you on Sunday.
You'll see me Sunday.
Are you not? You're not working for the Super Bowl?
Friday's before Sunday.
Oh, I'm not going to see you on Friday. I said I will.
Oh,
see
you won't.
Sunday.
You won't. You definitely won't see me Friday. But
See, there you go.
see you Sunday. But thank you. I
I
appreciate
said I'll see you Sunday. What do you
I will
mean?
see you Sunday. Yes, I thought
Oh, you don't work on Fridays.
I thought it was
You don't work
universal.
Fridays.
I thought it was
You don't work
universal.
Saturdays. Look at me.
I
I'm
don't.
Danny. I don't have to work with Mark and I are just slaving away over here, working every weekend. Fridays, Saturdays. We work all the time. Danny,
And we
I don't
love
work
you
on
for it.
Fridays.
And we love you for it. I will be working because I'm going to see Bella on Friday in Brooklyn. So
It's not
I
work.
will have
That
to.
is lovely. Tell her we say hello.
I will tell her you said hello. She's coming back for the Super Bowl, so hopefully
Well
she
done.
returns to school Monday in one piece. So, but much love to everybody out there for listening and watching the Sixers Talk podcast. We appreciate Marc Jackson for being available, Amy Fadool for being on point like a ballerina, and Ben Berry for whatever the hell he does. But we appreciate you turning in for the Sixers Talk podcast, listening and watching. Much love to everybody out there. We will see you next time. Have a good day.